In this episode, you'll discover ways to get more reach in the stroke if you have knee limitations, like osteoarthritis.
Feel the grip of the oar handle, smooth yet firm in your hands. Taste the salt of your own sweat and the occasional splash of water. It's all part of the journey. Welcome to another episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Each week, our host, Masters rowing coach Rebecca Caro, dives deep into the world of Masters rowing. Whether you're on the water or in the gym, join us to become a faster master. Let's go rowing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. I'm Rebecca Caro, and today we're responding to a question that came in from Maureen. She explains, I'm a 70-year-old, 139-pound female who started rowing 2 years ago. I've got osteoarthritis in both knees, which prevents me from doing much more than a 90-degree bend in my legs. Essentially, I'm a half slide rower, not quite three-quarter slide on a good day. The rest of my body is pretty flexible. I've got no shoulder, back, or other issues. And I realize I have to adapt something in order to get more reach in my stroke, but I don't want to overextend and cause injuries. So, big challenge here. How can you get more reach in the rowing stroke when you have limitations? So, firstly, yes, absolutely. Don't cause more injuries by trying to overdo it. Recognize where your comfort zone is and where you are capable of pushing your limits. So, for example, one of the things about knee osteoarthritis means that that's where your limitation is. But rolling forward into the catch, you've got two other major joints that contribute to your ability to get a tight pack up at full slide. Your ankles and your pelvis and your lower body. So maybe one of the things you could look at is doing a functional movement assessment to find out how much mobility you've got in those two other joints and whether or not that's something that you could address with sports massage, with osteopathy, or some other form of therapy that can help to lengthen your tendons, make those joints more mobile to compensate for the fact that your knees definitely are not going to become more mobile. If you're interested, there is a free functional movement assessment on our website. Go to Our Programs page and look for the label that says free stuff. So let's have a think about compression. Yes, the ideal that we're all heading towards is to get our shins vertical at the catch, your heels lift up so that you're on the balls of your feet, your back is rocked forwards so that your shoulders are sternward of your hips. So one thing that I would say that you can start to look at in terms of how the boat is set up is to increase the vertical height between the bottom of the heel of your shoe and the top of the seat that you're sitting on. Typically, for a women's boat, particularly a light woman's boat, for someone of your size and weight, this is between 15 and 16 centimeters measured vertically. So you push the heel of the shoe down so that it's touching the foot stretcher and put a tape measure in there and extend it vertically and then slide the seat forward and measure off the lowest point in the seat. There's a little dip that you will see. You have to get your head right down so that you can get a straight eye line, or put something horizontal along the top of the seat so that it intersects with the vertical tape measure. Don't let the tape measure be at an angle. Make sure it's vertical. So there are a few things you can do to increase this. Try, if you can, to get to over 17 centimeters. You can lower the shoes where they're mounted on the foot stretcher. There's usually a plate with between 3 and 5 holes, and you can lower those down. Beware if you put them very low and you've got short legs. Some boat designs, the deck, that the flat bit where your slides are, will then cut into your calves, and that's not ideal because then you can't get your legs straight. So there's a compromise there. The other thing you can do, which is a cheaper and quicker option is to use a seat pad. Now, seat pads come in different designs. Some of them are squishy ones that are designed for comfort. What you need isn't one of those. You need a solid foam pad. And you might find the best way to do this is to go to a DIY store or look for some packing material that came with something you've purchased that has that sort of expanded plastic. It's not polystyrene, it's a flexible plastic. And you could glue layers of those together or cut them to the same shape and then tape them together with electrical tape so that you've got a good 1 centimetre height. And when you sit on it, it also needs to stay at 1 centimetre. So obviously if it compresses a lot, you aren't quite getting that. So try that. You might want to test it out on a rowing machine first. So lowering the feet and raising the seat on a rowing machine. Then because you're in a stable environment, you can put a mirror up so that you can actually look at yourself sideways and see whether the angle of your shins gets a little more vertical with making that adjustment to the vertical height between the bottom of your shoe heel and the seat. The second thing that you can do is to change the rake or the angle of the foot stretcher. So most foot stretchers are set at approximately 42 to 45 degrees so that they're at an angle like this. In general, if you make it more shallow, so instead of being 45 degrees, it's a shallower angle, you may also find that that enables you to get a little more compression. This is, though, a little bit more dependent on your ankle flexibility, and it's a reasonably easy adjustment to make, but it slightly depends on the design of the boats that you're using. And if you're not regularly in the same seat in that boat, it means you have to change it before the outing, and then you've got to change it back after practice. Get in touch with me if you need help on how to change the angle, but it is worth looking at because that and your ankle flexibility may also be hindering your slide length. In terms of ankle flexibility, I have found that osteopaths are particularly good at doing both soft tissue work on your body as well as bone manipulation. And if you were to go to an osteopath and say to them, can you help me using deep tissue massage to try and enable me to get a greater flex in my ankles? If you show a photograph of what you're trying to achieve, they can then take a look at your body and help you out. Now, when I first started rowing, my very first or second season of rowing, I did not have good ankle flexibility due to an injury that I'd had when I was younger. And my then coach made a very interesting recommendation, which I still work on today. And she said to me, do you brush your teeth? I was somewhat concerned because I thought this was a trick question and nothing to do with rowing. But I confirmed that, yes, I did brush my teeth. And she said, so every time you brush your teeth, squat down onto the floor and brush your teeth squatting in the catch position. If you can get your feet flat on the floor, that's great. But if you can't, don't worry, just squat on the balls of your feet. You may need to hold something for balance, maybe the wash basin in your bathroom. But that gives you 2 minutes twice a day, if you brush your teeth twice a day, in which you are sitting in a compressed position and working on strengthening and lengthening the tendons up the back of your ankle and the muscles in the front of your foot and along the top of your foot. And that will help you to make that joint a little bit more mobile. So that was the advice on changing the rake or angle of your foot stretcher. The third thing you can do also to raise your seat height up is actually to if you bought your own seat, and assuming the track widths are the same in the boats that you use, what you can do is actually unscrew the seat top from the undercarriage. The undercarriage is the 4 little wheels and they're connected by rods. And you can then, between the seat top and the undercarriage, you can put some little battens of wood, maybe 1 centimetre, if that's what you need. and then screw the seat top back on again. And it's like a booster seat for a child in a car. It'll just sit you a little bit higher, but don't go into doing that sort of thing until you work out whether or not increasing your seat to heel height is a useful fix for your situation. Now, there are also some rigging things that you might consider. So in the rowing stroke, we have obviously an arc that the oar, this is my fictional oar, goes through, and it's anchored at a pivot point, which is the oar lock. So if you can't roll all the way forwards, what you'll find is that your catch is not as far towards the bow as the other people in the boat. So one of the things you can do, and it's very simple geometry, is instead of having the pivot point here, you move the pivot point closer to your handle. Now, that was a big change that I've demonstrated on the video here, but it might be little more than 1 centimetre or 2 centimetres. And what that does is it enables your handle to move further round the arc. So you're shortening your inboard relative to your outboard. Now, you're 70 years old, so you don't want to increase the load of your work a lot, because you probably don't want to be sort of feeling like you're doing weightlifting every single stroke. So you need to keep the ratio of the length of the outboard to the length of the inboard the same if you can. But if you row with slightly shorter oars and a slightly shorter inboard, what you will find is it'll do two things. One is it'll adjust your position in the boat. When you sit at the finish with the gap between your handles at the finish, which is usually 1 to 1.5 fists widths, it'll adjust you closer to the stern so that, yes, your finish angle may not be perfectly in line with the rest of the crew, but it will allow you to roll forwards and you'll be set up a little closer to the stern than everybody else, and hopefully make your catch angle a little more aligned with everybody else. And there is more power and leverage to move the boat at the catch than there is at the finish. So what we're talking about here is making some compromises in the rigging that I hope will help you. So shorter oars, keep the ratio of inboard to outboard the same if you can, but that shorter inboard will allow you to adjust your foot stretcher closer to the stern. If that's not clear, get in touch with me. There's a very nice video that we have from Mike Davenport, who was one of the speakers on our Rigging for Masters masterclass, which you can find on our website. And he explains how to do some of these adjustments in that video. Now, I hope that's been helpful, Maureen. I very much look forward to hearing more about your exploits. And I firmly believe that you totally can row with osteoarthritis in your knees, and making these adaptations. So Masters Rowing is rowing with adaptations that we can enable you to have a pain-free row and to also get aligned in a crew boat with your other colleagues. You may also look at little things like increasing your layback, your backswing, although your body alignment then won't be identical, but you might be able to get a slightly longer stroke with that. It does depend on you having good core strength in your tummy muscles in order to do that. But that's something that I would talk through with your coach, because you could then put more power into the backswing and arm draw than your other colleagues in order to compensate for the fact that you haven't got quite the same amount of leg drive length than the others. I hope that's been helpful. If you also are a rower with osteoarthritis, please share this video and send me your insights from your condition, because I don't have your condition, so I'm doing my best to understand from the information that you give me. Maybe we can make it better for a few more rowers by adding to the insights that I've shared today. Till next time, bye-bye.
We are part of the RowingChat podcast network. Please tell your fellow rowers about the show. If you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.